My name is Linda Brown, and I'm campaign coordinator for the Cecil Bothwell campaign. And we're so happy to be here for so many reasons. This is our 6th town hall meeting. We've already had a town hall meeting in Henderson County, in Brevard, Burnsville, Black Mountain, and Waynesville. And we've had a wonderful time holding town hall meetings. And Angela, our operations team leader, said, "Oh, the town halls are almost over." But actually, we have 5 or 6 cooking right now. So this Saturday we'll be in Andrews, and then we'll be in Silva, then we'll be in Cherokee. So I think we're going to be on this road show for a while again. But anyhow, we're very happy. You should know that we have been at this for 10 months. We've been in all the counties. We have a county coordinator in every county. And we have 1,100 volunteers. And in every county we have volunteers. And we're hoping that you'll sign up and become a volunteer as well. So without any further, I have to answer this phone. The person who's going to introduce Cecil tonight is Jonathan Snyder. Thank you, Jonathan.
Well, I myself am recently involved in this as of maybe a week ago, so this is all kind of new for me too. So I've been trying to get involved locally, so this is my first shot. Cecil Bothwell, candidate for the U.S. Congress in North Carolina's 11th District, is a biographer, investigative reporter, green builder, and small business owner, organic gardener, and public servant. He was elected to Asheville City Council in 2009. Bothwell's career started with building trades, principally as a self-employed contractor with an emphasis on sustainable design and alternative energy systems. In the 1990s, he transitioned into investigative and environmental reporting and commentary, and in 1998 was founding editor of the Warren Wilson College environmental journal, Heartstone. In 2002, he accepted the post of managing editor of Asheville's Mountain Express, which I read occasionally, and joined the national editorial board of the Association of Alternative News Weeklies. During these decades, he won regional and national awards for investigative reporting, humorous commentary, and criticism. He has owned the micro-publishing firm Brave Ulysses Books since 2000. You all may be familiar with the investigation of the Buncombe County Sheriff Bobby Lee Medford, which is credited by many, including members of the federal prosecution team, with launching the investigation which put Medford in prison for 15 years. A 30-year resident of Buncombe County, Bothwell, 60, is an active member of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Asheville, where he started the jail ministry, participates in programs for the homeless, and serves on the Social Justice Council. He is a board member of 2 nonprofits which fund grade school projects in Guatemala and a library construction in Bolivia. He's been married once, and his partner, 25 years, died of metastatic breast cancer in 2008. So we welcome Cecil Bothwell this evening. Welcome to
Thank you all for coming out here this evening. I know there's lots of good things to be doing, especially when the weather's this nice. You can probably be out starting to dig in the garden already, since I don't think we're going to have a winter this year. But I do appreciate you spending a little bit of time here and letting me tell you what I see coming for the United States government and for the Congress. And I guess the buzz has mostly gone around here now that Heath Shuler has announced he's not going to run for re-election. I don't know much more than that yet. I've just been getting phone calls for the last hour from all over the place. That means that as of now, I'm the only announced candidate for the Democratic nomination. But we have, filing will open February 13th, so we have 13th to the 29th of February. Other people could jump in. If any of you are interested in running, you certainly are more than welcome to jump in as well. I do think, as Linda pointed out, we have a pretty good head start here. We have well over 1,000, over 1,100 volunteers at this point. We've been campaigning for 10 months and have been trying to get out and see people everywhere. To me, the heart of grassroots campaigning is to get out and meet the people. And one of the things I like about a town hall situation, and I promise that if I'm elected, maybe I should say when I'm elected, I will continue to hold town halls frequently in all 17 counties. I guess there are going to be 17. We don't really know yet since the court hasn't ruled on the new lines. But the thing about a town hall meeting is you get to ask questions and you hear my answers in front of other people. You can't give different answers to different people when there's a crowd. You can always go around back with the phone and give people different answers, but when there's a group, everybody hears you say the same thing, and you can hold an elected official accountable, and I don't care at what level, whether it's the city hall, in the state government and the federal government. It's a really good way to hold people accountable. Of course, we've been treated to some really interesting debates lately at the presidential level. I'm sure you all have not been able to escape from the news about the presidential debates. And it looks, I guess, like Mitt Romney may be in the lead now. Maybe he's going to sew that up. There was a little fear there for a little bit that Newt Gingrich might be the nominee. And I heard that the danger of Newt getting elected and being in the White House is that a younger, more attractive country might have come along and caught his attention. I am pretty much an old-fashioned Democrat. I believe in the solutions that the Democratic Party has come up with for this country over and over again. And we need to look to the future and come up with new solutions to the new problems we face. The big problem right now, as you all know, is the economy. As of today, I heard that Macon County has 11.3% unemployment right now. That's simply unacceptable. And it means there are a lot of people out of work, a lot of people whose houses are threatened, a lot of people who are experiencing hunger right now. And the way we have built out of depressions and recessions in the past is to do the work that needs to be done. Coming out of the Great Depression, we built the Blue Ridge Parkway, and we built the TVA dams that brought electricity to these mountains. And those are the kind of federal projects that have enriched our lives for 2 generations now. Later, after World War II, when we had too many men out of work, we had a GI Bill that helped get those returning soldiers an education they needed, and we built the interstate highway system, which again enabled us to build the future that we have now experienced. Those federal projects, putting people to work, doing the infrastructure jobs that need to be done, are the kind of thing we need to be focused on now. We need to fix our highways, and in this state, particularly the bridges. 1 in 4 bridges in this state is considered unsafe. I mean, we need to repair those bridges. We need high-speed wireless coast to coast. Other countries are way ahead of us on that right now. They have broadband wireless service everywhere. We should have that. That's the one way that people in the rural counties can compete on the world market. They can create businesses on the internet that can do business anywhere. We need to have a smart grid. Right now, about 17% of the electricity we generate is wasted simply transmitting it over the wires. We have the technology to do better now. We should install that smart grid and stop wasting electricity. At the same time, we should be retrofitting buildings. We're wasting an enormous amount of energy in this country. A think tank in Colorado called the Rocky Mountain Institute studies energy, and they say that if all 50 states were as efficient as the 10 most efficient states today, we could close half of our power plants tomorrow. That's how much power we're wasting, and that's off-the-shelf technology. This isn't counting on some new invention. This is simply applying what we already know. A new civilian conservation corps could do that. We could find ways to help people retrofit their homes, to help businesses retrofit their factories and their warehouses. We don't need to waste energy. So that's another job, and as well as airports that we're falling behind the rest of the world in our airport designs. And those are all jobs that could be done now They're essentially shovel-ready. We know what needs to be done, and we can put people to work tomorrow. I support the American Jobs Act, which envisions many of those sorts of things, and hiring more teachers. We need to fix education in this country. It's really disastrous that we're now 48th in test scores in math and science in the world. And North Carolina is 49th in per pupil spending now, since the Republicans cut spending, cut the 1 cent sales tax and slashed spending. Fortunately, our schools here have been bailed out by the stimulus plan. That money really, really helped these last 2 years, but it's running out now. And this next school year is going to be a very, very tough time for our teachers and tough for our parents and the students and all that. Another element that I think is essential is that we preserve the earned benefit programs, Social Security and Medicare. Everyone pays into those on their paychecks. Those are benefits you have earned by dint of having worked. We have to protect those programs into the future. Social Security can be easily fixed by raising the cap. Right now, people only pay Social Security on income up to $106,000. We can raise that cap, and Social Security is solvent into the far future. Medicare has a cap of about $109,000 right now. We can raise that cap, and Medicare works. And as it is, Medicare is working dramatically well, has about a 3% overhead, and is really helping on health care for, principally for the elderly, for the retired people. It seems to me that's the great model for our health care for the future. Ultimately, I believe we must get to a single-payer plan in this country. We have far worse outcomes under our current system than other countries that have single-payer plans. We're paying more for medical care in this country than any other country in the world, and we're not getting the same results. If we were getting better care, you could probably say, well, of course we're paying more for it, but we're not. And I'd like to see us move toward the Medicare model for everyone. I'm hopeful that the the Affordable Care Act that was passed under the Obama administration is going to move us in that direction. I believe that that's the intent, the underlying intent of that plan. Medicaid is very important to the poor in this country, but it's equally important to most or many middle-class people when they reach nursing homes. Families spend down the money till they reach the level where they qualify, and then Medicaid picks up the bills at for nursing care. So Medicaid has to be protected as well. I would like to extend Medicaid coverage to home care. Many, many families are taking care of disabled or elderly people in their homes, actually more than are in nursing homes, and we need to provide more support for that in this country. Now, all of that sounds expensive. Those sound like very expensive programs. There are three principal ways that I would like to pay for that. One is to cut military spending. We have squandered America's wealth for 10 years on 2 wars that we didn't need to fight. As I said, starting 2 weeks after 9/11, a police action is what was needed to bring criminals to bay, and in fact it was a police action that took out Osama bin Laden. The wars have simply cost us a lot of money and had not much result. It really looks like Iraq may break into 3 countries. Between the 2 Islamic factions and the Kurds. Afghanistan has never been a country. It was an invention of the British Empire during the Raj, and it's a bunch of tribes. And we're not going to leave there with it any more unified than we found it. And again, it didn't solve the problem, which was getting the people who committed the crimes on 9/11. But we can cut military spending now, and the administration is starting to do that. They've announced they're going to bring 100,000 troops back from Europe. Start to tighten the belt. I think we can do better. We have many more bases overseas than we need. We need a good defense of the United States. We don't need to be the world's policeman. And in fact, many countries in the world are tired of us trying to be the world's policeman. We're much better off to work with diplomacy and work with other countries. It's interesting that China and Russia were the principal countries that helped us impose tighter sanctions on Iran recently. It wasn't the US action that directly did that, it was China and Russia. So we can count on other countries to help us keep the peace in the world. So we can save money on the military. I think we need to make the taxes at least fair from top to bottom. There's no reason why Mitt Romney should pay 13% when you pay 28%. It's crazy that we allow people to get wealthy in this country and then stash their money in Swiss bank accounts or in the Cayman Islands so they can avoid taxes here. And I think I'm really appalled that Romney is running for office claiming to be a patriot when he's been cheating on his taxes, in my view. He's been cheating all of you every time he puts another dollar in the Cayman Islands. I think we need to make sure that companies that do business, that decide to move plants overseas don't get benefits for doing that. I'd like to see the U.S. government only contract with U.S. companies. Halliburton is a particularly evil example. We turned over most of our military supply chain to them for those 2 wars, and then they moved their headquarters to the Mideast. They aren't even an American company anymore. They took our billions overseas and then decided to avoid our taxes. So I want to see taxes leveled out. And a particular one that I'd like to see implemented is called a financial transactions tax. It's a little tiny tax on every sale of stock or futures trading, commodity futures, any of those things, a little like 1/4%, which doesn't mean much to a person who buys stock and holds it for their kids' education, for their retirement. But there are people who are doing 100 trades a minute on Wall Street by computer. They're basically gambling on little tiny changes. And by adding that quarter percent tax, it'll dampen the creation of bubbles. And it will make them pay for their gambling. I mean, right now we're actually subsidizing people who might just as well be at Harrah's. And then once they lose all their money, we bail them out. No, I don't want to go there. I don't think that's what we need to be doing. So that financial transactions tax and a fairer tax system would be very helpful. And then the other thing that I really think we need to do now, and this goes against everything you've heard on Fox News for the last 10 years. Everything you've heard from the Republican noise machine since Reagan, they keep saying cut, cut, cut. The deficit, the deficit, the deficit. Well, right now, US Treasury bonds are paying about 1.5% on a 10-year bond. 1.5% interest is below the rate of inflation. That means literally, when people buy treasuries right now, they are paying the government to hold their money. And it's actually just a little bit crazy. When Standard & Poor's knocked down our credit rating last August because of that mixed up fight in Congress over the debt ceiling, where did the smart money in the world go? They flocked to buy US treasuries. Because even though they lose money on them versus inflation, it's a safe investment. If you have a mortgage on your home and you could refinance for 1.5%, you jump at the chance. If you have a car loan, if you could refinance for 1.5%, you jump for it. That is really cheap money. Now is the time for the federal government to borrow, to do the jobs we need to do, to build the infrastructure that will build the wealth of tomorrow, to educate the kids who will have the jobs of tomorrow, to make our high-speed rail in some corridors, to make our freight rail better, to do all of the things that we know we need to do to make this more competitive in the future. It's called anti-cyclical spending. Historically, during a depression or a recession is the time the government should spend. And then it cuts spending when boom times come. Boom times come, you cut spending and tax rates go up because of increased incomes, and you easily pay back the debt later. And it's not that I believe in endless debt, but national debt is very different from your and my credit card debt or something, because it's owed to investors, many and most of whom are in the United States, who get that money. It's part of the larger economy. And I really think that we can afford to do it now. We did it before. And a historical example I want to stick in here, go back to the Great Depression. In 1929, the stock market crashed. The economy fell apart. About 2 years later, voices in Congress started saying, now we've got to cut, we've got to cut, we've got to cut. And they cut spending and drove us into the Great Depression. Congress created the Great Depression. It didn't have to be that bad. And we're seeing the same thing happen right now in Europe, where the European Central Bank has forced Greece and Italy to slash their spending, and they are both spiraling down into depressions. cutting spending during recession is exactly the wrong thing to do. They are lying to you when they say that we should do it now. They are absolutely lying. And we can't afford to do that. We really can't. We need to save this economy first, and then worry about paying it back later. Again, just the opposite happened during the 10 years, well, the 8 years of the Bush administration just passed. They cut taxes and spent like drunken sailors during boom times. That's the wrong time to spend like mad and cut taxes. And that's why they left Obama with such a mess. You know, you hear that Obama has a lot of people on food stamps now? Wasn't his idea. And in fact, the absolute number of people on food stamps has dropped recently. So we have ways to afford to do the projects we need to do. And anybody who tells you otherwise has some hidden agenda going on. A lot of the hidden agenda is coming out of a group called the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, which is doing great damage to my county over there in Buncombe. One of their characters is one of our legislators, and he's pulling out all the stops to trying to privatize the water system in Asheville. He jacked around our electoral system for our county commissioners. Real trouble. We call him King Moffat, and hope we send him home next November. Okay, that's sort of a statement of an overview. Now I'd really like to take questions, because that's how I learn what's on your mind, and you get a better idea what's on mine. Yes?
I have lots of questions, but the first one, you were talking about the debt and treasury bonds paying 1.5%. You hear a lot about the Chinese, how we owe the Chinese a lot of money. We're borrowing from them. And I'm wondering how is it that we're borrowing from the Chinese, and at what percentage? And what percentage of our gross, of our budget are we actually spending on paying down the debt?
At the present time, we're not paying down the debt. We're paying interest on the debt.
That's what I meant,
yeah.
interest on the debt.
And I don't remember the number offhand. China's a problem. It's not quite as big as some people picture it, but China is the largest foreign government holding U.S. debt right now. And it's substantial. It's a big chunk of what I think they hold about 20% of the debt that's held by foreign entities, which
and
is.
In what manner is that debt held?
They buy U.S. treasuries. They invest in U.S. Treasury bonds. That's the debt that we owe. The reason they have all that cash is because we're buying so much stuff from China, and because they're artificially depressing the value of their currency. It's called the yuan or the renminbi, depending on who's writing about it. They say that economic experts say that they're depressing it by about 30%, which in effect is charging a 30% tariff on U.S. goods. Our deficit with China, our trade deficit, is approaching $1 billion per day.
Wow.
It was well over 270 billion the last I checked for the preceding year. I mean, it's incredible. And I think we need to wield a bigger stick on trade. I have advocated at least threatening tariffs. There are foreign policy experts who say, oh no, you start a trade war. But I think unless we rein in what China's doing, we're headed for more and more trouble down the line. There are a couple of ideas I've seen also that might help. Like, for one thing would be to inspect every container that comes from China, to require that every single container be inspected. Right now we inspect 1 in 1,000 or something when they come off the ships. That would cause a physical slowdown in import of Chinese goods, which would make them want to comply with our economic issues more. It'd be like a tactic. And it's justifiable. We don't know what's coming in all those containers. So, I mean, it's not entirely off the beam to do that sort of thing. But whatever it is, we need to get really serious with them and say, look, you can't be doing this. Fortunately, it appears that they're going through a housing bubble situation, and their economy may be about to collapse, or at least depress, bubble burst kind of thing, and that might help too. Rising oil prices will certainly help, and we're seeing that right now. When oil prices went up in 2006, Walmart was beginning to hurt because it was raising the cost of imported Chinese goods. And I think we're looking now, as the economies of the world recover, India and China are competing with us for oil, and the prices are going up pretty quickly. And so that may help solve the problem to some extent also. But it's a biggie, and I really do think we need to get strict with them. I don't have, another element there is that US companies offshore their businesses, and we ought to find disincentives for that. North Carolina has lost more jobs to China than all but 3 other states, principally in clothing and furniture manufacture, that they went directly to China. The whole factory went, and we ought to disincentivize that somehow. And I'd be really open to the best ideas on that, but I don't have the exact solution. Questions? Wow, you're an easy audience.
Okay. We have many senior citizens here. Okay? Now, I can't figure out how a senior citizen can vote for a Republican when they threaten to take away our lifeblood, the 3 items you mentioned. Okay, Medicare, okay,
Right.
Medicaid, of course, Social Security. The thing is this: how can we as Democrats respond to these people, and the fact that we, as Democrats, created this? Many people who take these programs are first online, and they criticize Mr. Obama. They criticize the local politicians. How would you, as going for office, respond to these people for us? I mean, we keep this area going as in Florida, tremendous retirement. For instance, excuse me, our Republican friends went down to the villages. Okay, all these people are fairly well off, most of whom I'm sure are getting social programs, entitlements. How could Mr. Romney, Gingrich, etc., go there and tell people, thousands of people who are obviously interested in this, when these same people, their lifeblood is Social Security. That's why they're retired. That's why they can keep a community like these areas going. Your area, Buncombe County, I'm sure you have a preponderance of people like us who are retired. We did the right thing. We're teachers, professionals, retirees, workers. Unions are coming under attack. Many of us are here because of unions.
Right.
How would you address this?
You've got some different pieces there. One thing is to try hard to get the message out. You earned, they keep calling Social Security an entitlement program as if that's somehow evil. Of course you're entitled to it. You paid for it. It'd be like going to a restaurant and ordering a meal and paying for it and then telling you can't have it. I mean, you're entitled to it. You paid for it. And so we need to keep reminding people that they are paying into the system, that it has worked for a couple of generations now, and remind people what happened before that. Seniors, two and a half generations, my grandmother's generation didn't have Social Security. My grandmother never got Social Security, and she lived on a poverty level, but for what her children could help provide for. Seniors were poor in the old days. They were frequently hungry, they frequently died for lack of medical care. We have changed that with very successful programs here. And we have to keep reminding people of that. As far as the attack on the unions, I believe unions interject democracy into the workplace. They have been critical in building up the American middle class, and the American middle class has suffered since the Reagan days when he made union bashing official policy, starting with the air traffic controllers. As the unions have lost strength over the last 30 years, the American wage earner has flattened out. Since 1999, we haven't actually had a net increase in average wages in the United States, and that's exactly because of the weakening of unions. And it's really encouraging to my mind that they've started to come back. With the Transportation Safety Administration workers, 50,000 of them joined the union this summer, which has frightened the Republicans no end. In fact, it's caused a political hassle between the airport and Asheville, but I won't veer off into that one. We need to protect workers' rights. Sure, some unions have been bad, some businesses have been bad, some politicians are crooks, but they have strengthened the American workplace for, at least over the 20th century, back into the late 19th, with things like the 40-hour work week, getting rid of child labor, OSHA and other safety programs, the workman's compensation, all of those sort of advances that help keep American workers safe on the job and help provide for their future. And I think we just got to keep hammering it and hammering it and hammering it until people will turn off Fox News.
Is North Carolina a right-to-work state or not?
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
Okay, I understand Indiana just, the governor just signed off on that, so they're a right-to-work state.
Right.
Without collective bargaining, without that ability to collect dues, a union has no teeth.
Yeah.
How would you representing, how do you address this as part of North Carolina legislative bodies, possibly representing us in U.S.
Right.
I mean, how do you address this?
Well, there are some limited ways that we've been able to address it. For instance, at the city level, Asheville City is a certified living wage employer. We pay people what is certified as a living wage in Asheville, which is a minimum of $9.50 an hour with benefits, or $11.75, I think it is, without benefits, which still isn't great, but at least it's a bottom line that we have drawn for the city, for all city employees and all city contractors. So that's a way to sort of address it in a limited way. Trying to get the legislature to change the laws in the state is really, really difficult, and particularly so right now with the current crowd in Raleigh. This state has historically thought that it was a great idea to keep wages low to compete for businesses from other states. So basically the politicians have historically said, we'll give you labor cheap if you'll come here, which is really undercutting the workers in this state. But the workers were sold that idea and have subscribed to it pretty much. I mean, unionization sort of caught on in the 20s and 30s in the textile mills in North Carolina, but it was beaten back severely.
But those same people went offshore, Mexico, other
Mhm.
places. They came from northeast to Carolinas for
Right.
cheap labor back in the 50s and 60s.
Right.
Right? And they promised them everything in the moon.
Right.
Now they're going elsewhere for cheap labor. So it doesn't work. I mean,
Right.
we're trading off, okay, cheap labor for this,
Absolutely.
but the cheap labor gets cheaper and we wind up, we're held up to dry.
Yep. You hand it.
Well, I was gonna ask, what do you think the national minimum wage should be?
It would seem, as I understand the numbers, we're at a historic low right now compared to the cost of living. So it ought to be higher. Since the living wage organizers have pegged it at around $9.50, maybe that's where it ought to be. I don't have a specific number in mind, but it certainly needs to be higher. It's hard for most of us, I think, to quite get the change in wages. When I started work as a mason, mason's tender, well, I started painting when I was doing construction first, and I was making, I think I was making $1.60 an hour, which seems that seems impossible. And I remember changing jobs to a masonry company because they gave me another $1/4 an hour. And that's only 45 years ago. You know, it makes everything seem so expensive today, and labor seems so expensive. And yet, as I said, on a historic basis, the current, is it $7.25 is minimum now? Is actually low compared to the cost of living. Yes.
I know anybody that's turned television on lately has seen these horrible attack ads that are being paid for by PACs. And I understand that you are not going to accept money from the PACs. So I guess my concern is, and my question is, are you really preparing for the kind of attacks that you've got to anticipate are going to come your way, the money that's going to be spent on these horrible attacks? And have you considered the issues that they're going to attack you on and how you're going to deal with this? And I'm sure you've given this some thought.
I've given it some thought, but not a lot yet. The reason being that we were aiming for this primary, which now may not even occur. And my sense was that we weren't going to see that level of participation in the primary battle. I think when we get to November, given what the Republican super PACs have been doing in Florida, to each other, I mean, if they're that nasty to each other, I can't imagine that they're not going to be horribly nasty to me. And Art Pope has a reputation in this state for pumping millions into races. Well, there's two things we're doing. We're going to have enough money. Hundreds of people are donating small amounts from across the country who want to see Heath Schuler. That was their initial thing. They want to get a real Democrat in office here. So I'm getting $5 here and $5 there, and that really can add up. It's something like the Obama model in 2008. There were a lot of small donors, but they do add up. If we can get 5,000 people to donate $50 a piece average, we're going to be in really good shape in terms of advertising. Get out and talk to the people like this. Get volunteers, our 1,000 volunteers getting out and talking to people. Going door to door, which I don't think anybody's done in a congressional race in this district before. But we're going to have people hanging door tags in as many neighborhoods as possible. And reminding people that the reason we're not running those attack ads is that we aren't leaning on super PACs. I won't take money from corporations. I won't take money from corporate PACs. I won't take money from anonymous super PACs. I won't take money from PACs that I'm not associated with. I will consider taking, if it's offered, PAC money, for instance, from the Sierra Club. I am a member. There's nothing they can't donate money to me and buy my vote. They got it. Planned Parenthood, I help raise money for Planned Parenthood. If their PAC decides to donate to my campaign, I would accept that, because again, they aren't going to bend the way I vote on issues. I'll have to thread my way through it as we go forward, but the idea I have is that you can't accept money from people who have who are going in a different direction and really own yourself anymore, because they're going to have a piece of you. And I'm open to discussion about that. Maybe I shouldn't even take money from those PACs. I have to think about that when I get to it. But principally, I want to get from real human beings, up to $2,500, which is the maximum allowed for an election cycle. And I really like getting the $5 donations. But we're gonna have enough. We're gonna make this thing run in every county with those volunteers. We're gonna be out there talking to people, and I'm gonna win. The alternative is too horrible to think about. Thank you. What's up next?
Not to sound a sour note here, but I just did some investigative information on one of the last races, the one that Davis ran against Snow in 2010. The Republicans in Raleigh gave him close to $400,000 to run, and then he got $265,000 from the Art Pope PACs.
Right.
Plus, he raised another $50,000 or $60,000 out of state. So very little of the money that he raised actually came from his district. So Snow was running against $750,000. That's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying to you that I understand you want to get as much money as you can from an individual, but that kind of money isn't going to count in November. It's going to count as the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So what are your connections to the Democratic people in Raleigh? Have you got an establishment there, or you feel that they're going to be able to contribute the hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're going to need when they start running nonstop ads?
I actually haven't had those discussions with the Democratic establishment, because up until now I was challenging their candidate.
Obviously.
I mean, a lot of the establishment was saying, well, hey, an incumbent is an incumbent. We're better off to have a D there than to end up with an R there. And so there's been some resistance on the part of the hierarchy. Now that, well, and we really don't know until February 29th whether I have an opponent, but at least for the time being, I'm the only one running, and I can explore that some more. I would think that they're going to support Democratic candidates. So, yeah, it is kind of a sour note, but we can do it. And one of the things that I think that I'm going to do that I don't think Heath Schuler did is really arouse the Democratic base. There are a lot of very populist progressive Democrats out there, even Democrats who are conservative on social issues, which is a completely legitimate place to be, but they still believe in the kind of programs that the Roosevelt administration put in that employed their grandparents, that put food on the table when their daddy was working on the Blue Ridge Parkway. They remember that sort of thing. You know, it's government jobs work. And, you know, people say, oh, big government, but it, you know, it's, we sometimes, we hear so much of that kind of rhetoric that we forget that there's nothing inherently wrong with, or nothing about the particular size of the government that is necessarily negative. I mean, at times the government gets bigger, at times it gets smaller. Actually, it's smaller now in terms of employees, the federal government is, than it has been since the 70s, I believe. It, you know, really actually cut back during the Obama administration. And certainly the state government has been cutting back because of the cuts in spending there. I like to tell people that when they talk about size about a government, think about the size of an airline. Like, the very, very best airline would probably be one that had one pilot and one really, really good jet and a really good couple of mechanics. And so you could count on that plane being on time, getting you where you wanted to go, but the cost would be incredible to have that for you. That'd be like your private jet. And the schedule would be pretty bad, because if they were in California and you wanted to go somewhere, that jet wouldn't be available. So actually a bigger airline is better, because then you can have a schedule that works for you. How big is best? I don't know, but like if I want to get out, if I have to go somewhere, going through, say, Delta works pretty well to get point to point across the country. It's a bigger entity. So there's times when a bigger government can actually do things for people that a very tiny one couldn't do. So the whole size of the government argument is kind of an empty one that I'd argue against. Yeah, okay, yes.
You're getting to know us and we're getting to know you. Tell us a little bit about your strengths as a candidate that you bring to the table, and what do you consider your weaknesses as a candidate? Things that could be exploited or used against you or whatever.
Would you tell us what he said?
Okay, yeah, I'll repeat it so you couldn't hear it up here. He said, y'all are getting to know me right now, and that one way is for me to tell you what I think some of my strengths and weaknesses are as a candidate. On the strength side, I've always been good at learning. And at problem solving, which is why I was pretty successful as a builder. Which a lot of that is learning each new type of building, each new technique, and applying them successfully. And so I've always been a great user of the library and now the internet. And that is what I applied to my work as an investigative reporter. I'm really good at researching things. I really am. That's one of my great strengths. I have learned well how to find out information. And I think that's a real strength, both as a candidate in being able to respond to new issues, and as an elected official, helping to find answers for, say, right now, the city of Asheville. I've helped, for instance, we've guided the city toward part of our stimulus money, in large part due to my push. We're going to use it to retrofit all of our streetlights in Asheville with LED lights, which they're so much more efficient. We're going to end up saving $365,000 a year on electric bills. And that's the kind of an innovative solution that I help guide, because I look for those kind of answers. So I think that's pretty much a strength. I'm pretty almost obnoxiously optimistic. I believe we can win this election, for instance. And I think that helps keep my spirit up, and probably the team, the campaign team, because they feel like, well, yeah, we can do this. And I go, yeah, we can do this. And therefore, I'm also I'm a multitasker. I bore fairly easily if I have to do just one thing. So I do a lot of things. I'm handling a lot of elements of the campaign. And I know the job. I know I do a lot of the tech work for the computers in the campaign. I do a lot of the data work. I understand all of those pieces, so I know what I'm asking other people to do. And I've had up to 20-some employees at a time in my businesses, and so I've done some management of businesses. I've been a small business person for many years. I know that piece. Okay, weaknesses. I'm almost obnoxiously optimistic. And maybe see the world through rose-colored glasses because of that sometimes, and might not see problems coming. I am, I'm single and I have a sweetheart, but we have separate houses, and there's a lot of people seem to like people who are married as candidates, you know. I decided not to have children, and I think the fact that I chose not to have children is another, you know, thing that a lot of people think, I'm not a family man, you know. Although I've tutored a lot, and my sweetheart has a 13-year-old who's somewhat like my own teenager. So I probably can be attacked on that frame. I've been called extremely liberal, and I don't think I am, but I've been painted that way, principally because of my opposition to the wars. But that will be brought out. And I think some people will take exception to my religion. And I don't know to what degree that's going to come out. I'm an active church member. I believe in churches. I think that they do good work in the community. And I've been active, like creating the jail ministry and other work there. But it's a Unitarian Universalist, which is a pretty sort of non-denominational sort of denomination. And it might not appeal to some evangelical or stricter, more conservative Christians, and they may take exception to that. I'm a stout defender of freedom of religion and separation of church and state, because it protects your church from the government. It protects your faith from interference from people in the government. And so the Baptists actually should agree with me on that, because they're the Baptist church is what put separation into the Constitution, because they were worried about the Episcopals in New England, who they were going to run the place. But that could be, they can take issue with me on that. I believe deeply in the Golden Rule. I think that should be the basis of all law and of international behavior and of personal behavior. That's the strength side again. So that's some of strengths and weaknesses. Yes?
How are you at schmoozing?
Hmm?
How are you at schmoozing?
Schmoozing. I'm getting better. I don't like. I don't really like just going and schmoozing with other politicians, for instance.
What's smooth?
Schmoozing is being talking friendly with somebody just because you want to get on their good side. I get kind of impatient within political situations where all the pols are all shining up to each other, and you know. But I've enjoyed meeting people and in the campaign so far, more than I expected I would. I don't tire as much as I thought I would. I thought I'd get just really sick of these meetings, and it's been fun. And the house parties have been fun, and I'm meeting so many nice people. Yes?
I'm gonna ask something, and I'm doing it just because it's been talked about so much with people that I'm dealing with. We put you in Congress, and say they come up with a bill where they want to increase that $85,000 pension, or they already have free medical care, but you know, something else comes up about it. What would your position be? Do you feel that as a voter, as voters, we have a right to determine, to have a say in this, that they should not be able to do this without having the public speak up? Because these things are causing a lot of conversation among people people I know. And yeah, congressional.
You're talking about compensation for congressional
yes, the $85,000 pension is there for 5 years, and the free medical care for the family, and they're fighting against our getting it. And this, I know I wasn't asked if I agreed with this, and I don't think any of us would. This was not put up for a vote to the people, and it should have been, because we're the ones paying for it.
I'm not familiar with the $85,000 figure. What I have seen in a lot of emails that have gone around is the assertion that congressional people get free health care. They do not. They pay into Medicare like everybody else does. After 5 years in office, they can buy into the same federal health care plan that all federal employees qualify for. So, and it may be a generous one, but it's the same as all other federal employees. There is no continuing health care after they leave office. As far as pension goes, that was true up until about 1985, at which time all of Congress went on to the Social Security system, and they pay into Social Security like everybody else, the same deal up to $106,000, which I said should be raised. But and then after 5 years, they can buy into the federal pension program, again at the same rate as any federal employee. So they're treated exactly the same as other federal employees. The one exception on health care, I believe, is that if there's an emergency, they can be treated at any military base. The idea being, I think, that if they're there on official business and have a heart attack, they can get treated there. I'm not real clear about that, but the idea that they get a lifetime pension simply for having been in office is not accurate, and the health care ends when they leave office. So unless, of course, like any other employee, I suppose a retired person can buy into the plan. But again, it's exactly the same as every federal employee. It's not a special deal for Congress.
Well, then I have to say that this just verifies something I will, as a former journalist reporter, I always did my own research. I came up with one thing and someone came up and said, oh no, we researched this and this is so and so. And because of their position, I felt, well, I guess I must have missed this.
They researched it on Fox News.
I researched it on Fox News, that much I knew. But I had to accept it because of their position, and I won't even name the paper that they're working for. It's not here in Franklin, that's for sure.
You know, the new communications afforded us by the internet are wonderful in some regard. And they certainly allow the spreading of way too much misinformation. And it really, I get so weary of getting the same ones over and over and over again that, you know, well, the birthers with the Obama birth certificate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, come on already. We have better things to do with our lives. Yes?
I was just wondering what your position was about the post office issue. It's affecting a lot of our smaller communities that are possibly looking at losing their post offices. The cutbacks, and also what some people say is merely an accounting issue with them having to fully fund their pensions, which is an ask of other things, which seems to be a bigger push towards privatization. So if you're
Right.
asked to be pulled into a vote on that or have any input.
Okay. Yes, I think that what's happened is, it was done under Bush when there was a Republican majority in mid-2000s. They imposed that thing that only kicked in lately, which is to force the post office to subsidize, to finance its health care plan for the next 75 years. Something that's never been imposed on any other division of government. No private corporation does that. It was completely a plan to wipe out the union, the Postal Workers Union. I think that should be overturned. That's one. Two, the post office's function is changing as we go forward. A lot of our private communication is now email, and so the absolute tonnage of mail has dropped. Maybe we need to cut back to 4-day-a-week delivery, but we should not cut back on rural free delivery, you know, going out to the outer of people. That's their only communication often. So maybe we're going to have to move toward a little less service. Another one we could do is raise postage rates. 44 cents is an incredible bargain, and if we need to make it 55 cents to make it solvent, is that really a burden? You know, I mean, how many first-class mail pieces of mail have you mailed in the last year? Really? I mean, most of us.
As few as possible.
A few bills, maybe, if you're not paying them online. But I believe that the post office, it was mandated by the Constitution that we have a post office. That kind of communication is essential to democracy, and I don't want to see that go away. Yes?
I've had many discussions with Heath Schuler, some of them very heated. And I would just be glad if we had a congressman that would read the bills. you know, that really read the book. But in his, he has told me that this district is so conservative that he has had to make some votes in order to represent the district. Now, he never really felt a loyalty to Democrats, I'll have to say, he never did. But he felt like he was walking a tightrope in this district because he depended on Republican votes to put him in office. And from my understanding, when they redistricted this district, they came to him and said, we are coming after your seat.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's true, because they think that it is a Republican district, that the votes are not here for a progressive candidate. Do you get that from your research? Do you think a progressive, that the votes are here for a progressive? I agree with everything you're saying, we all do.
Well, yeah.
But I'm worried that a progressive can't be elected.
The way we can elect, and although there's the progressive, it applies in some regard, I also would say real Democrat also applies, is to get out the vote. And if each of you takes 10 people to the polls with you or calls 10 friends, we can win the election. The problem is when people don't show up. And right now, the new district, the old district was about, I think, 32% registered Republicans, 35% registered Democrats, and the rest were unaffiliated. Now it's the thing has shifted, so it's a little more, a percent or two more Republican and a percent or two less Democrats. It isn't a huge shift. Now this district, the new district, if they add up the votes for McCain in 2008, he would have done a couple percent better in this district, just using the real votes totals from that, than he did. So yeah, we're conservative. There are certainly a lot of social conservatives, particularly, who have been often knee-jerk on guns, gays, God, you know, I mean, those and immigration. But I think, given the depth of our problems with jobs, Graham County has 17% unemployment right now. You all have 11 here, and it's between, I think the lowest is Buncombe at 8 point something, and the highest is Graham at 17. There's a lot of people out of work here who are maybe beginning to think, maybe I should vote for my wallet this time and stop voting on all these knee-jerk issues that have never really even come up in Congress. You know, a congressman can be in there for 6, 8 years and never have a vote that actually affects immigration significantly, or gays, or abortion, or, I mean, the votes aren't happening. The votes that are happening are the ones that are shoveling money to the wealthy. And I've talked to a Tea Party group who seemed to get that. In fact, I spoke to a Republican men's club in Henderson, and 3 Tea Partiers came to me afterwards and wanted to volunteer for the campaign. So there's a popular streak on the right. So I think we might beat them at their own game this time.
Well, one other thing though, is that when you look at the D's and the R's and the I's, you cannot count on those D's all the time to vote progressive. There are, I learned from phone banking. There are a lot of D's that do not like President Obama, and they don't like the progressive label. You know, they are convinced by whomever that we are broke and that we cannot do big things in this country anymore, that we are broke. And that's all I hear from the Tea Party. And I don't know how you combat that. You know,
it's difficult.
I am obnoxious, I know. My husband just goes and stands in the corner when I start on this. I've embarrassed him, really, because I will not let the lie lay there.
Right.
And if I hear the lie, I'm going to say something, and to my detriment a lot of times.
One thing that makes me feel like more of my obnoxious optimism, there are at least 8 Republicans who are going to run in the primary in the 11th. At least they claim they will. We'll see who actually files for office. But there's going to be a crowd, for sure. And I think there's bound to be a runoff. 2 years ago, Dr. Dan Eichenbaum came in second in the primary to Jeff Miller, who was the Republican candidate 2 years ago. In a runoff election, people, the more fired up people show up more often. A lot of people don't bother to vote in a runoff. It's sort of out of our radar. The chances are he'll be one of the two in a runoff. And I think the Tea Party will show up for him. And if he gets nominated, it is going to be sweet. He believes the United Nations is trying to take over Western North Carolina through Agenda 21.
Oh, God.
He is way out there. And I think that a lot of Republicans will have trouble showing up for him.
Which one are you talking about?
Dr. Dan Eichenbaum. Yeah, he's on the edge.
We've got a lot of them here. Agenda 21 is a big issue with a lot
Yeah.
of the Tea Party.
In fact, at the Tea Party debate, they pulled that question on me, and I said I thought that as a plan to take over the world by the United Nations, it was completely fraudulent. That is not designed, and the audience groaned because they were all on board with it. They were selling DVDs that told you all about it and everything. Yes.
Let me carry a little bit this that's got me a little concerned too, that I think Elaine focused on. We have a strong independent group here, the Ayes.
Mm-hmm.
We're outnumbered heavily outnumbered if you take the Ayes of the Republicans. One of the things that we've noticed through the campaigns and the election and the process is that if you take a look at what he did by overbalancing and getting into the Republican side a little bit, he was able to pull better than 60% of the vote out of Macon County. But then if you take John Snow's and then look at Heath's vote as he went the first 2 times, and then the third time, it kept going down and down and down. The problem I see is being able to grab the independents, because we're outnumbered almost in every county, regardless of what we were saying just then.
Right.
And that's true particularly here. Yeah. Where if it wasn't for Buncombe County and Jackson and Haywood and somewhat of Haywood, where the heavier Democratic base is, but we're outnumbered. And to be able to compensate, we've got to be able to draw that independent group. What can you do as a stronger, more progressive Democrat to be more attractive to the independent, which has more of a Republican leaning?
Well, I would emphasize again and again that what we need are solutions. We don't that the reason we have a government is to do for all of us together what we can't do for ourselves. And that what we've seen with the Republicans in office and in the majority in Congress these last 2 years is that or the last year now that they've been the majority, they have blocked and blocked and blocked. And they're preventing us from getting to solutions we need to arrive at. And they don't seem to have any good ideas except the word no. All they want to do is cut. They want to cut your Social Security. They want to cut your Medicare. They want to cut Medicaid. They want to cut school programs. They want to divert school money to vouchers for private schools. They are basically a party that is dedicatedly aiming to enrich the rich and to impoverish the rest of us. And if that's what you want, vote for it. But that's not what America was built on, and we can do better. You deserve better. That's what I'll tell them. Anything else? Yes.
Years ago, I just led a local campaign up in Highlands to defeat Jesse Helms. That was my mission. And I just got friends and people I know to give me money, and they just gave me money, and I did all kinds of research, and I was like my own little PAC. And created ads and put them in the paper. And I want you to know that the Highlands District did not vote for Jesse Helms. The majority did not vote for Jesse Helms. And so I know it's possible, but it takes a community coming together behind a candidate. I do know that.
It definitely does. In fact, going back to, you asked about my history, I think, or where I come from. You asked about strengths and weaknesses a while ago. And my own political education started, I was active through the years. I did some phone calls, I did some door knocking and things for different candidates, and I donated money to causes that I believed in, but I didn't do a lot until 2002. In 2002, Cynthia Brown was running for the US Senate in this state, and she came to Asheville and delivered a short talk, and I was smitten. This woman belonged in the Senate. She got me. And I said, I'll do anything I can to get you elected. And I became her Western coordinator, which was principally bunkum because of limited funds and time. But she finished 4th statewide in that primary. She finished 2nd in bunkum. And I knew it was entirely because I had helped make that happen in that county. And that made me feel pretty good. I thought, wow, one person can actually pull together lots of people, a community, and make something happen. So then I heard about Jim Hightower, who was going around the country with his Rolling Thunder Down Home Democracy tour. I heard about it on NPR one morning, and I thought, boy, that sounds like we should do that here. And I phoned his office, and he said, sure, I'll come out to Asheville. You just create the event, and I'll show up. Oh. And so I started recruiting people. I think that's where I met you, Roger, was around that. Exactly. Yeah. And we had ended up with over 50 community groups, nonprofits, and so forth, coming together at the Asheville Civic Center. We had over 1,500 attendees. We had Jim Hightower. Eric Alterman was a speaker. Granny D, the woman who at 90 years old walked coast to coast for campaign finance reform. And Patch Adams, the real Patch Adams, was there. And we had music groups and political talks and education things. And again, with all this that came together, I thought, wow, it was because I heard that on the radio one morning, and I called one person. And that really gave me, again, this feeling that, yes, we can make a difference. And so when I left the newspaper, I decided, well, I'd try running for office. And it was kind of late. I started in February, I filed in February that year in 2008 for the county commission, and I didn't start early enough. But I still got a pretty good campaign going. I came within 0.8% of beating a 20-year incumbent. And I quit politics forever. Until midsummer, when a friend of mine looked at the data and he said, you had more people vote for you in the city. You had twice as many people in the city vote for you as you'd need to win a city council election. He said, why don't you run for the city council? And I did, and I came in first in the primary in the city council election. And again, pulled together this great group, thanks to Linda Brown, who's my current campaign organizer. She ran our city campaign. We had more donors to that campaign than had ever donated to a city campaign in Asheville. We had a pile of 525 donors, which was just amazing. And it once again fired me up and made me feel like, yes, we can. Yes, we can. So I'd appreciate each of you to organize a community like you did, because we can get the vote out and we can take back the state legislature. We need to turn this around. They are wrecking the state government right now, right and left.
It sounds like you've got Asheville locked up. Maybe you have to spend a lot more time out west with us.
Well, we have been. And if the new districting goes through, they're carving a lot of Asheville into the 10th district with Gastonia, where it has no business. But we've been campaigning for 10 months now and have made repeat visits. This is the first sizable event here in Franklin, but we'll be back as often as we can. It's a lot of driving in this district. The new district is 210 miles long, from Bergen Caldwell all the way out to Cherokee and the Qualla boundary, and from line to line from the north side to the south. And so there's a lot of time. We're trying to do multiple events. When I was doing an interview here with a newspaper before I came here today, and we're going to do 3 events in Murphy. Is that?
That's right.
Right.
Robbinsville, Murphy, and
On one
Andrews,
day.
and then you're tall. In Andrews.
Right. And so we're trying to get there, but it's a big district. It's the 2nd biggest geographic district in the eastern United States.
What newspaper did you interview?
The other one. You're with the Macon. Which?
The Franklin Press would be.
Franklin Press, yeah. Right. It's just a reporter. I don't know. And we're working on radio spots and radio interviews, which are going to be coming up. And we're already. Do you have a local theater here?
Yeah.
Local movie theaters? we'll have to get out. We're on the screen now in Brevard on their local theater. Before every movie, there's an ad, and we'll have to do that here too.
You have a good billboard, a really nice billboard.
Oh, it's
on Depot Street, Medicare,
Medicare,
Life, Liberty,
and the pursuit of happiness.
that's
Medicare is the life part.
Yes.
Oh, it's wonderful.
That's
And we've got billboards in Cherokee, in Murphy, in Cullowhee, and between Silva and Waynesville now. So we're reaching out. You want to say something, Ellen?
I do. Okay. Oh, I have a lot.
Thanks to all of you. If you have questions afterwards, please feel free to ask me personally.
First of all, my name is Linda Brown. Again, I'm campaign coordinator, and we've been doing this for 10 months. And we've been to all the counties, and we have county coordinators everywhere. And God willing, Ella is going to be our county coordinator in this county. Let me mention a couple of things that you should know. We've been doing this for 10 months. We have been to every county, talking to people, passing out Cecil cards at festivals in every county. We've been here at the Scottish Festival and talking to people. And we've been very surprised at how people want something new. They're very not happy with Congressman Schuler. Every weekend we would go out and people would say, we even ran into his relatives who said, I wouldn't vote for him. We were in Brevard at the White Squirrel Festival, and people said, well, you know, he's my cousin. And I always said, oh, well, okay. No, you don't understand. They said, we wouldn't vote for him. So, but the other thing that we noticed, because now we're taking grocery store polls. We go to Ingalls in every county, and we talk to people. I say, come out, and we have 4 questions. What issues do you care about the most? Which political party do you feel will solve your problem? Which candidate, Heath Schuler or Cecil Bothwell, would be more likely to solve your problem? And do you plan to vote on May? Well, the people overwhelmingly, like 65%, they say jobs. Jobs, that's what we want. We want them for ourselves, our children, our grandchildren. And second of all, they say, well, pretty much they don't know which political party. See, if you watch Fox, you would never know. So the Democratic Party has to talk to its own people and independents and explain. If you want to protect the American way of life, you have to vote for the Democrats. If you want to slit your own throat, then vote Republican. But, and I tell my neighbors that too. But the question of people are very, very demoralized about our political system. Yeah.
In one of your emails I got, you talked about Waynesville as his home county. You realized he was in Swain. Okay. I just want to make sure you knew that.
But he lives in Waynesville now.
We have talked to Democratic Party officials in Swain, in Haywood County, in everywhere, around the 15 counties of District 11, and they are very not happy with Heath Schuler. And what we're doing now is making a shift, because Heath Schuler is a very nice person. What we had the disagreement is he was voting with the Republicans. That's the only problem. He's voting with the Republicans against the president's jobs program, twice, against the president's health care, against Medicare, women's issues, against Social Security. Now we're going to make a shift to the real people who are the problem, which are the Republicans. And that will be no problem. You're going to have a Democrat who's going to vote like a Democrat, and you have the Republicans who are going to do. We listened to the 8 Republicans last Saturday, at the Tea Party debate in Nashville. 8 Republicans, and what did they say over and over? Cut corporate taxes and
Can get Obama up.
yeah. I mean, if you have problems, I mean, my son grew up in these mountains. Now he works in California. I want to bring him home. Our young people can't live here and make a decent living. And so jobs, and of course, Medicare and Social Security. But what I care about is exactly what all the people at Ingalls care about. People who go to Ingalls, just average, regular Jane and Joe, they care about jobs and security and a future for their children. And that is what we're about. If you love your children, then we've got to stop going down this wrong road. And here we have a good and decent man. He was a straight arrow. I tell people this. I'm a school teacher. I've taught every grade, 6 through 12. He was an Eagle Scout at 14. Now, when you've taught 8th and 9th graders, you know that that means something, right? That means something. He doesn't lie. He's very honest. He's very ethical. And I'm sure they told you at the top of the evening that we had a sheriff in Buncombe County who was a crook. And everybody knew it. And nobody did anything about it. And then Cecil is an investigative reporter, wrote the stories about him, and they still didn't. The district attorney didn't prosecute him. So Cecil took his case to the feds and gave them his file, and then the feds came in and prosecuted our sheriff. So there are people who say there's no honest man. Every person can be bought. Oh no, there are some people who cannot be bought. He got death threats for pursuing the story on Sheriff Bobby Medford. But today, Bobby Medford is in prison for 15 years.
Wow. All right.
So you're not dealing with the average person who can be bought. And so we have to shift that kind of thinking, you know, especially young people. You have to explain there are people in this world who are honest to the core. It's just how they're made. And that's what we have here. But let me finish with I have a question and an appeal. My question is the League of Women Voters. I'm a member. And we would like the League of Women Voters in Macon County to hold a debate. It's very simple. They do just what the Tea Party did. Invite all 10 candidates. 9. Gotta make that simple. 8 Republicans and 1 Cecil. And let them debate. Because there are only 2 sides on this. There's the democratic way of life, and then there's the mean-spirited one. mean. Just watch their audiences, and their audiences are meaner than the candidates. That's possible. So, ask your League of Women Voters if you can host a debate.
There's several of us here. We'll see to it.
Okay. Oh, thank you. And now's my appeal. Now, I'm in the library, so I cannot ask you for money. But I will introduce you to an envelope, which you could take a look at. How was that?
Great.
Charles, that's such a great help. So, you could hold a house party. You could join our film day. Oh, there's a myriad of things to do for the campaign. Pretty much everything that you could imagine, that's what we're going to do. Hold a potluck dinner, bring your friends in, talk about, they don't want to talk about politics, talk about the future for our children. Because if you grew up here, you know your kids can't make a living. And if you're retired here, your kids can't come and live here because they can't get a job here. This is no good, and it doesn't have to be this way. I was born in 1947, I remember good times. I remember, and I'll finish with this, I ran into the Tea Party people who said, never creates jobs and never creates wealth. Well, my father came out of World War II, where he was in the U.S. Navy, and he was a civil engineer. And President Eisenhower started the highways program, highways crisscrossing America. And my father started his own business selling construction equipment, Caterpillar and all this, to build the highways. And my father hired people. And they stayed with him for 30 years because he paid a decent wage. Because he was a Democrat, by God. And mean spirit, and he had a good heart. We forget. But anyhow, we have to remember, there are better days in our past, and there are better days in our future. Thank you.